Hello and welcome to this episode of the Event Manager podcast, where I am delighted to be joined by Will Curran, the Chief Event Einstein of Endless Events. And the topic of this podcast is the ever-changing role of production in the event industry. But we don't just talk about that, we talk about so much more. We talk about if we will ever be able to order whole packages for events online. We talk about content and how it builds authority and relationships and how it's a core strategy for endless events. We talk about how designing your own job, something that Will does very well, and having small scheduled family and friends breaks prevents burnout. We talk about how the pandemic will raise the bar for all events. And we talk about how sustainability and DEI are more important than ever, and how hopefully a benefit of the pandemic will be an improvement in these areas. We conclude by talking about how VR games and those types of environments may be the future of the event industry. I hope you enjoy this podcast, and please do invite others to subscribe and to download the podcast and rate the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you very much for listening.
Now for a word from our sponsors, PHL Life Sciences, a division of the Philadelphia Convention and Visitors Bureau. Host your convention or trade show in Philadelphia, one of America's leading life sciences hubs. PHL Life Sciences, the first and only CVB division of its kind, will connect you to the professionals at the forefront of your industry and to a culture you can only find in Philadelphia. A city known for its rich history that's forging a bright future, Philadelphia challenges the expected and defies convention. A world of discovery is waiting. Visit phllife.com to learn more.
So Will, thank you for joining us today on the podcast. Thank you for joining us today.
So I was going to say the Patcast because my middle name's Patrick.
There you go. You heard it here first, folks. Thank you for joining us today. It's really nice to have you on the Event Manager podcast. I know you're kind of super experienced when it comes to podcasts and interviewing and things in the industry in general. But if someone doesn't know you, and I know when you do live events, you look out for those zeros. If there's a few zeros out there that don't know you, could you tell us a little bit about who you are and how did you end up here?
I love that. Yeah. When I say like at the beginning of my session, how many people haven't heard of me? And like, I see a bunch of hands go up at that point, or, zeros in the chat. Then I go, oh my gosh, yay, I get to like talk to a new audience. But no, yeah. For those who haven't heard of Endless and myself before, my name's Will Curran. I'm Chief Event Einstein of Endless Events. We're basically a nationwide event company inside primarily the United States. We also service Canada and also a little bit of Mexico as well, but primarily focused on the United States. We have three podcasts now, which is how we originally met on the Event Icon show and through IMEX and everything like that. Just basically trying to help educate the industry as much as possible and try to break things a little bit, kind of do things a little bit differently than everybody and have fun along the way.
The bright yellow, green kind of endless colors definitely stands out.
Exactly, because everybody wears black in the industry. They want to like blend in, don't see me, and we're like, we want to wear lime green. We want people to know us. We want to be excited. We're the guys that are running around high fiving everybody at the events. We like to have some fun.
But what do you consider yourself an event management company, a production company, an AV company, all of the above?
A little bit of all the above. I think that the transition for our company, we primarily, if you had to give us a label, which like labels are so hard in the industry because, a production company could mean three different things in our industry, right? And if you go outside the industry, it also could mean a film production company. But for us, production company is probably the best label to be able to describe us. But now that, technology has now become the center of every single event, we're finding that we more and more start to bleed into that event management side of things. That people are not just looking for, hey, set up the production, run the show, make sure it runs smoothly, but they're asking about strategy strategy, especially because of all the content that we're putting out, and we're kind of trying to think about the events a little bit differently. People are really pushing for a lot more management level kind of services, right? It's no longer just, oh, hey, the production company sets up the stage and runs it, but instead it's, oh, I need you to also find the furniture that's going to be connected with all the TVs so people can virtually conference in. I need someone who can, build out all of the content as well, because, whether you liked it or not, now we have to edit a million videos after a conference because of all that post-recorded content. So definitely still, we describe ourselves as a production company, but, it's tough because we're also not a full-blown event management company yet.
Nice. Yet, yeah. No, it's interesting because we're seeing a big trend. Just releasing it tomorrow, actually, the hybrid event evolution guide that we're releasing. That someone very well, Brent Kruger, wrote with us.
Awesome.
One of we did a survey recently about who is the first person or the first type of company you go to when you're planning a hybrid event, and the top answer is now the event tech. It's the virtual event tech provider, which is a little bit surprising. I mean, we gave a lot of options, and that was one of them. Maybe if you kind of bring a few options together, that might be a bigger number. But is that something that you're seeing? And are you kind of, I guess, the outsourcing for some of those companies, if you don't mind revealing, or do you kind of see yourself in a different role and not necessarily partnering in that way?
Yeah, no, definitely saw a complete flipped in script for sure. Like, I used to joke that, the technology was the last thing. It was like the cherry on top. It was the thing that get like the breadcrumbs at the end of the budget. But then, because of the pandemic, it completely shifted everything, where everyone came to us first and said, like, what should my budget be? And it dictated a lot of ways. And definitely Endless's model of our company has always been that we believe that technology is moving so fast that it is unwise, not smart, to be able to dig your toes in and say, this is the exact technology you need to use. Because, we very much thought that same way when it came to physical technologies like AV, is that, for example, LED technology. We didn't want to buy 1,000 LED lights because literally next year they would announce one that's twice as bright, twice as good. And it's definitely that Moore's law of, every year, everything like multiplies exponentially, getting better. So we've always thought that owning the technology was the bad idea because it moves so fast. But instead, what you do is, for us, is because of our position in the market, we have such thought leadership that a lot of these technology companies are coming to us saying, please use us, please use us, please use us. So we have this kind of wide breadth of being able to tap into any technology. And then our kind of special sauce is our implementation and how we do it. The ability to take things off of the plate of the planner, make their life easier. And that's very much like, our mission statement is to create the equation. So the idea of taking something complex and distilling it down to the simple equation is really what we're all about. But definitely, we're noticing that people are coming to the technology companies first to say, like, what do we do from here? And that's given us a really, really good position in the industry.
So you're seeing a lot of people going to the C-Vents and the Hop-Ins and those, and then do you work with the tech companies, or do the people come to you as like an additional kind of service?
Both. If the client's coming to us and says, I have no idea what I'm doing, just help me figure this all out, we'll piece it all together for them. We'll ask them all the questions to find what platforms or what technologies they need, what hardware they need on site, what their layouts look like, all that sort of stuff. But then also too, because a lot of these tech companies got, so busy so quick, they came to us and started saying, we need you to just help us implement, right? And that's, again, I think a very common characteristic with these technology companies is they're technology companies. They're not designed to be event management, event production, event planning companies. They're just like, let me build this awesome app and give it to you. Can you just run it all? And for most planners, they're like, I need someone to do this because now I have 4,000 other things I have to do on top of it. So
it is quite funny. And I think a lot of the tech companies are, in an ideal world, they want to be SaaS companies, right? They want to have this tool that you just like go run and use it. But what I think is very much, especially on the B2B side, is event, planners don't really have the capacity to just like learn production and figure it all out. They could theoretically do it, but it doesn't make sense, right? So you need this extra resources, and how they find those extra resources is really, I find that fascinating, because I think in a normal in-person event, the AV production side of thing would always be a sort of separate thing, but now it's not necessarily, or at least in the way it's kind of sourced, it's not separate.
Totally. It's 100% integrated. And you're right that, a lot of these companies, they're targeting the enterprise grade is what they want, right? There's kind of this life cycle of a SaaS company that you start off kind of being B2C, like individual, like you $20 a month plan. And then you're like, oh, well, wait, having 1,000 customers at $20 a month is way more pain in the butt than having one customer that's paying you 20 grand a month. So what they end up doing is trying to like move up market and go to enterprise. But what a lot of them aren't prepared for is that when you go to enterprise level, the hand holding is like so much higher. You have to really be able to give the tender loving care to these customers because they're spending a lot of money with you. And I think that a lot of companies end up failing because of that, because they aren't prepared for that. They want to just have this model of, sign up on our website, you take care of everything, self-service, good to go. But especially in the events industry, no one does it. No one look at let's talk non-event tech. Like let's look at furniture, for example. Like all these big furniture companies, they wanted to set up these shops where you could go in and order the chairs and place your order, boom, good to go. It comes and delivers and then they're good to go. They all tried it and none of it worked because everyone wanted to talk to a sales rep. They wanted to get advice on what was best. They wanted to, negotiate a deal, all those things like that. So I think that very much we're seeing that same effect happen to event technology companies.
Why do you think that is? I mean, is that just the nature of events? They're so high touch and need personalization that's never going to change? Or do you see that changing at some point?
Yeah, I think it would be cool for it to change for sure. And I think it could change in the future. The same way that, for a long time you'd go into a fast food restaurant and you'd be like, why am I ordering from a human? I can just like do this on a screen. And now all we do is do it from a screen. I think that the industry has a level of expectation of what it wants, right? And I think that comes in with it is the first starting point. But I think also, if I were to take like a really hypothetical guess at to why people don't like the self-service model is because, our industry lacks a lot of like certification and barriers to entry. And so I think our industry really tries hard to make what we do really complicated in order to prove value of what we do. So can you imagine that if you told your boss like, oh yeah, I just went and ordered the furniture. I went on the shop and, ordered a bunch of things and it just showed up, right? They'd be like, and why do we pay you to be, senior event planner on our company, right? So I think a lot of times that we have this like false stipulation that we have to make things complicated in order to make ourselves that fifth most stressful job in the world, rather than trying to find ways to make things simpler. And then I think a little bit, maybe dash a little bit of fear of technology too. I mean, like this last year really showed us that people in the events industry were really technology averse. They were afraid of apps. They're afraid of technology, right? You see it with, how many people that are still using Excel to do their spreadsheets rather than putting in Google Docs and collaborating on it. So I think that you add this fear of like, well, what happens if I place the order and it double charges me or, anything like that, you're just really worried about making this big purchase. And then let's also dash in the fact that they're all high ticket items as well, that, you don't go online and order a Bentley online in a shop, right?
You order a Tesla online, right?
You can order a Tesla online. I was about to make that exact analogy. And so it kind of takes that first mover advantage. And then you kind of, what was smart about Tesla is they targeted like the early adopters, the really technology people that were totally cool, putting down a deposit and hoping their car showed up at their house, a month later. So I think it'll start to happen over time. And I think that what you're going to find is that there's been like the rise of the event tech nerd over the last year as well. The people who are like really nerdy about platforms and apps, they're now the heroes that everybody looks to. And now they can kind of help pave the way to say like, this is how it should be. So I think that kind of scatters in a little bit of Will's random thoughts all together at once.
Well, I think your last thought is partially the generational thing, right? That idea that the new generation will be used to ordering groceries online, ordering other things online, and it'll sort of make more sense to order something like that online. But can you see a future product where you, I don't know, order a hybrid event for 100 people at the Javits Center, and there's a sort of package, that you just go like, okay, order this. It costs, I don't know, $10,000 and it'll be delivered at this time. And you show up and you tell them where to place the chairs.
Yeah. I don't know. I want it to. I think that in order to get there though, the information is so that kind of model I think is really good when the consumer has a lot of knowledge and understanding, right? The reason why Tesla can crush it is that people like I watched when I got my car, I watched like 100 videos on it. I read the manual. I was talking to other users. I drove one. Like I knew everything about that car before I got it. So I think that the difference with maybe the events industry is that we need to get to the point where, yeah, if you're deciding to order everything on Javit and you get the right chairs to show up and the AV shows up and your event app is attached to it and everything like that, you have to understand every single little element of it to be able to do that. Now, the question becomes, though, is an event too complex where you really need multiple planners in different areas, right? We have our catering person, we have our AV person, we have our, this sort of thing. Is there too many like stakeholders in that planning conversation that's going to make it too hard to have a one simple checkout process? Now, the question becomes, I think the first step will be each individual element of it, but that's not going to make things easier because now we're still managing 5 different vendors and everything like that. So maybe it'll take for, one single event management company to be like, yeah, we can order everything online. But again, if you do that, your model totally changes and now your value for what you're doing is totally different, right? It's about execution. It's about marketing. It's less about, customer satisfaction, or I guess less about you demonstrating your unique skill that you have.
Interesting. Okay, well, maybe that's something that Endless can get into. It sounds like
you're
always trying different things.
I like to break things for sure.
For sure. You do a lot of content. You put out a lot of content. I don't think I know of any other production companies, whatever that means, because I do agree that production is this term that is used for so many things. Whenever anybody talks about that, they do production. I'm like, what does that actually mean for you, yes, right? That could mean so many things. But you do, a lot of content. You put out a lot of great stuff. You do Whiteboard Wednesdays, or you did, which I always thought were great. The way of kind of explaining and bringing things down to simple, simple ways of understanding things. You do 3 podcasts you mentioned. Why do you do all this? And how do you does it work, or how do you kind of show people that works and that helps you kind of get ahead?
Yeah. So for the content kind of thing for me, when we decided to do it like years ago, I mean, we started writing blog posts 10 something years ago or so. It was very much a leap of faith in a lot of ways. When I first started, it was because I thought to myself, I was reading the book Epic Content Marketing, and it talked about how like you need to build out like a media company inside your company, and how buyers nowadays research everything, and how very much the power of the salesperson has switched. And that it used to be that the salesperson kept all the information, but now it's people are going to Google and research everything ahead of time. Again, the industry is getting more and more towards this point. And I basically thought to myself, well, let me think about all the last big purchases I ever made. Right? A car, or deciding to move into a new apartment, or buy a new computer. And I realized like I Googled everything. I looked up everything I could on it, and that I ended up buying from people who helped educate. Like most recently I got into car detailing, which is a complete departure from the events industry. I've just learned like trying to teach myself how to wash a car properly without scratching it and things like that. And this brand, Adams, is a very famous like soap and wax and polish manufacturer. And what I realized is that I ended up buying their products because they had so many YouTube videos showing them how to use the products, educating you on how to properly wash a car and everything like that. And this is a more recent example, but I think that we end up buying based on this content in the future, right? Rather than the person who sells you the best or has even the best price or whatever it may be. So I very much mirrored my buying experience at first. And to kind of answer the question of does it work, it definitely changed over time. When I first started, we were just publishing blog posts about like really cool lighting and video setups. And we were just like, this is really cool. I love how they use the lasers. Or we were talking about the Olympics and how like, back then, that was like 10 years ago, they were using the LED badge or wristbands that would all light up and do pixels across the place. And I was like, wow, that's really cool. And what I found is immediately my customers who are already kind of familiar with my brand were going to the blog and saying, oh, I like that. Can we do that at our event? And I realized an immediate opportunity to do upselling. But then what I realized is that it can also be used to attract a new audience. And so what we started seeing value in is that when we started publishing, we started ranking on Google for certain keywords. Deciding to talk about event trends. We wrote a trends article. Oh, wow, that ranked #1. And then people would come in. And then once you kind of figure out a funnel to be able to capture their information, keep them subscribed and engaged, it started working really, really well. And what I kind of realized my kind of ultimate aha moment was actually probably like the year I first met you, is when I went to my first IMEX, and it was really wild. I remember the moment when I was like, this works, is that I was standing next to Sean Holiday from Crowd Mics, and we're just sitting there, and he knew everything about IMEX. I barely knew anything about IMEX. I didn't even know what IMEX stood for, what it was, like I just showing up. And I'm standing there with him, and he's talking about like the where the tech startups kind of compete to like win the title of best tech startup of IMEX. And I was like, oh, cool, this is really neat. He's like, yeah, this company's here, and I've never heard of any of these companies before. And he goes, and then all of a sudden, this woman walks up to us and goes, oh my God, hi, Sean, it's so great to see you. Gives him a hug, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, and then she turns to me and goes, and looks at my badge and goes, you're Will Curran from Endless Events. And it's Dahlia. And that was the first time I ever met Dahlia. And I was like, I've never met Dahlia before. She had heard of me, and she was a huge fan. She like couldn't wait to talk to me. And I realized it was because that content that we were putting out, it built this kind of authority for us in the space. And so where it worked really well for us is it built those relationships without us really even having to do them. Like I built a relationship with Dahlia without having ever met Dahlia and without having to really do any work other than creating that content. So it worked really, really well for us. And, ultimately it's how we get all of our business now. We're 100% inbound. We follow like the HubSpot inbound methodology. Obviously now we have 3 podcasts. I think at that time we were barely starting Event Icons up at the time. And, it definitely just grew and grew and grew. And then now it's all about like, hey, constantly just trying to find the questions that people are asking and giving them the answers. And I think that's one reason why like we very much transitioned away from being just, trying to call ourselves an AV or production company, is that, for a long time we realized like we have this ability to keep changing the market, because when we first started writing content, people weren't even sure if they could use the AV, like the AV company outside of the hotel. They were like, I can use another AV company. I thought my contract said I had to use them. And so we started writing this content about like how to get around restrictions and things like that. And then now it's like, feels like everybody knows they can use a different AV company. So I think one big reason why we're always constantly making content too is we want to stir things up a little bit, kind of talk about what no one else is talking about. Just try to be as helpful as possible and add as much value into the industry as possible.
So why 3 podcasts? And also I wanted to ask, how many people do you have working on content now?
I think we're at 10 total people in content, I think now.
And that's just internal, your own endless content to put on the website, to blog, to do all that kind of stuff?
Yeah. Video editors, writers, lifecycle marketers who write the emails that get sent out to you to guide you through like the journey of content.
And that's 10 full-time?
Yeah.
Wow, that's a big department of the company now.
Yeah. Very, very big department of the company. It's ironic. Now it's one of the smaller departments. We're now growing that department. We kind of like have a life cycle. We grow marketing, and then we grow sales, and then we grow operations, and then we grow all the admin stuff kind of as we're doing things. So what's funny is like it's actually one of our little bit smaller of our departments now, and now we're growing it even more because we're continuing that life cycle. Why 3 podcasts? Well, it started with Event Icons, which was selfishly my chance to use a Blab, which was like a video chat I don't even call it podcast. It was like everyone could hop in and out, and a couple people.
I remember it well. It was like 4 people on a mobile phone.
Yeah, 4 people on screen. Yeah. I was gonna say you probably were on when we were on Blab. And it was just honestly, it was my chance to experiment with it. I was very much about like, playing with social media platforms, and people were really talking about it. I was getting a lot of buzz. And so I was like, I want to try this out. And honestly, I had no intentions of it being like now running for like 5 years straight. I was like, maybe if I get like a dozen episodes out of this would be cool. But I just decided to do like very low effort. Everyone hops on. I didn't edit it at all. Like I literally just uploaded it then to the podcast software. And the podcast was kind of like the secondary nature of it. But it was kind of also like what I realized is after 2 or 3 episodes is it was also a very selfish way, an easy way to get to talk to people that I wanted to talk to, because I could just be like, hey, you want to come on the podcast? And no one's like, no, I don't, I'm above that. They're like, oh, a podcast? I haven't been on a podcast. Or, I'd love free exposure, And so it was really a great opportunity just to meet people. So that was like how I ended up building this network, and like how we ended up meeting and building a relationship. And I think that it was really, really cool to be able to do that. And then, one thing I learned from it though is that we decided to do video, and we did it every week live on Wednesdays at a specific time. And it was just like, I'd be like traveling through Europe. I think you remember this. I was going through Europe and like recording it from like the bedroom in a corner at like 2 a.m. in a hostel in Europe while I'm traveling and stuff. So it was just absolutely crazy. And then so we did that for like 2 years or so. And then Brent Kruger, who you mentioned earlier, and I were, he was one of our hosts on Event Icons and was like, we should do a show just about event tech, because we were so nerdy. We just wanted to talk about technology and stuff. And it was something that like him and I, whenever we were at conferences or speaking together, we would just like sit for hours and just talk about what we saw at CES, what news came out from Samsung and things like that, or this event app was doing this, or, oh, look at this technology and how it could be implemented in the events industry. And we're like, we should just like record these conversations. And I think too, all the event tech companies were trying to get on Event Icons a lot. We're like, we need a kind of like a separate conversation for event technology. So we decided to make that one. It was kind of Brant and I's chance to like nerd out on technology stuff. So that one's been running now for like 2 years or so, and it's audio only. I learned my lesson on that one. And just get really, really nerdy with it. And I think the thing I learned is that, when you start with like one piece of content, you kind of want to start to make those tracks, right? It's like kind of when you build out a conference, you decide to do like different tracks for different disciplines. Event Icons was really great for a lot of like kind of beginner target personas, because we talk about like how to plan events, tips and tricks. And that's what really that beginner buyer persona is looking for. But then we realized that there's these hardcore nerds who love our brand, but we're just like, I want to go deeper on technology. So that's where we created an Event Tech podcast.
That's a bit like having different Twitter accounts for different uses, right? It's like if you want to, like if you're into fantasy football, for example, you probably don't want to do that from your same Twitter account that you're doing like your event stuff, right? Because then it's like, no, like nobody's going to want, they're not the same audiences. Right?
People are going to get confused on it. Exactly. And then more recently, we created the Event Brew podcast, which was ironically, we talked about like trying to break out the mold of what you traditionally are doing, was kind of my opportunity that I was sitting here going, I'm getting pigeonholed as the event tech guy now, because we have an event tech podcast. We obviously have a technology and production company. I was like, I want people to know that I can talk about strategy, that I can talk about general trends and things like that. So I was just kind of looking for something a little bit more unique. And I knew that I wanted to do audio only again. And I forget how the concept kind of came to be. I want to say maybe I was having a conversation with Nick Borelli, and I think I knew I wanted Nick in as a host, because it was like him and I could just talk about anything. That was really like the cues that I would want someone as a host. It's like they're just easy to have conversations about, and we could come up with the topics like left and right. And we came up with this idea of like the view for the events industry, that like all the other podcasts were primarily talking about like tips and tricks and news and things like that. And what we wanted to do was like, let's like really share our opinions, because no one's afraid. Everyone's kind of afraid in the business world to share their opinions. So we're like, let's create a controversial podcast. We called it Event Brew. It was centered around this idea that we'd always have something to drink at the beginning of the episode. So you always hear us talk about what we're drinking at the beginning of every episode, and was just kind of a chance to like share our opinions, our thoughts, and just really we call it spill the tea. Just get really controversial sometimes when it comes to
nobody drinks coffee on the podcast, right? Everybody drinks different types of tea.
What's ironic is, no one drinks coffee, which there's a coffee like mug on it. So like Tui and I are more tea drinkers. I'm very much a tea drinker. Tui's like mixed between tea and like juices and things like that. Nick is always drinking something incredibly disgusting like Mountain Dew or something like that. And then what you'll find is like Dustin's the beer drinker, so he's constantly has a different beer on the podcast. But
I like the idea. Podcast that you can drink a beer at.
Exactly. And so like the idea was like clearly different themes. And, to be honest, we probably would have way more podcasts if I had unlimited resources, but I just don't. So I have like limited editing time. I have limited space because we write a blog post for every single podcast that comes out. So, but the idea is that, creating different audiences and different moments for people to engage with our brand, because, they might not like event tech. They might not like Event Icons, but they might like Event Brew, or they might not like Event Brew, but they like event tech. And what we find is that we have sometimes crossover, but then sometimes very different audiences across the board.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I wanted to just wrap this up with a question around kind of burnout. And you do so much. Have you ever reached the limit? and you're afraid of spreading yourself too thin?
That's honestly such a great question, Miguel. You know me so well to ask me a hard question. I think I haven't quite reached the level of burnout. I work really hard to like build little breaks along the way to be able to avoid this ultimate need for like a long vacation or whatever it is. So there's a couple of things that like kind of key in that allow me to avoid burnout. First is I love what I do, right? Like people ask me all the time, like, oh, if you were to sell Endless, or if you were to, exit Endless, or, what would you want to do? And I'm like, I don't know. I literally get to like design my job every day. I get to do the things I love. Like, I wanted to learn about video content and creating video content. So like we created Whiteboard Wednesday so I could learn how to film a perfectly white whiteboard and all these things. Like, I learned a lot about cameras during the time. If I want to, learn about a software, I'll just go do it. So that's one important thing, is I'm like, anything I'm passionate about, I have the ability to go towards. The second piece of it is that I've always designed, and it ended up getting kind of translated into the book, The Power of Full Engagement, which I discovered after I started calling it this, but I call it rhythm. The idea that it's not about like a big long break. It's not waiting for winter vacation or the 2-week vacation you're going to get, but instead it's about the little breaks along the way, especially for event professionals who are usually working Fridays, Saturdays, Sundays. You usually don't get a traditional weekend to kind of reset each week. So what I started doing is building in little breaks along the way. So most people don't notice, but like Tuesday night, I go get dinner with friends. Wednesday night, I have a board game night. Thursday night, I go see like every movie that comes out in theaters. So I'm a huge movie buff. And then Fridays is usually like hanging out with friends. Saturdays, sometimes hanging out with friends again. But then Sundays, like I disconnect. I do a little bit of planning and plan for the next week. But I very much focus on like watching movies, vegging, turning off my brain. But the idea is like having these little breaks along the way to kind of catch my breath. Rather than trying to like hold my breath for an hour and then try to get one big breath in at the end. And that's really helped me avoid burnout. And also too, just I really love my team. They work so hard. And we see so much stuff that ends up happening around Endless, and it's not all just Will Curran. Most people don't realize that, but my team's absolutely incredible. So I'm able to delegate to them. They're able to crush it. They're able to make the work happen. And so I think the mix of those three things has really allowed me to avoid being burnt out.
Are you ready to celebrate your successes in the world of meetings and events? The Skift Meetings Awards are back for 2024, recognizing the most innovative business events companies across 15 categories, and we want you to be a part of it. Winners will feature on Skift Meetings, sending a clear signal to events professionals around the world that these are partners they can rely on. The final deadline for submissions is June 11th. We encourage you to start your submission today to secure the best entry rates. For more information and to start your submission, head to live.skift.com.
So, I wanted to cover the future of the event industry. I think your current title on LinkedIn is the guy who talks about the future of the event industry. So, where do you see us going? I guess, I don't want to ask the crystal ball question of when the pandemic will end, because I don't think any of us really know. But sure. If you imagine a world kind of post-pandemic, when we're not as worried about restrictions, when things are open, when we can meet in person, where do you see what's going to be different when that happens, I guess, is my question.
Yeah. So I think one of the first things that we're going to start with is like, let's start with the obvious one that most people answer, is that like technology is going to be a huge integrated part of all of this, right? There's a reason why we say hybrid is the future, hybrid is now, all that sort of stuff, is that people are craving the ability to tune into events virtually and engage with them. So that's pretty obvious, right? And then you pair that kind of with this larger trend that is now happening, and as Mark Zuckerberg is now calling it, the metaverse, and this idea that eventually people are going to kind of join this new level of internet where people are joining via VR or AR or whatever it is, and it's this larger interconnected universe of things. So I think that pair that with that trend, everything's moving more and more digital as we go along. But I think if I had to pick one like big thing that's going to affect the future of the events industry, is that, people really are craving a really good experience. And I think the pandemic gave an opportunity for the less successful, I'll even air quotes, events to be able to happen. And because they aren't happening now, because they might have been like, look, we can't go virtual, it wasn't successful, the content wasn't good, whatever it is, I think what you're going to see is kind of the, lack of a better term, the trimming of the fat of the bad events and the events that are coming. And now the bar is going to be raised when it comes to it. Right? Especially because people have the opportunity to turn in virtually. People are going to sometimes decide to not go to the in-person experiences that were blah, but instead they're going to attend and put their money and invest their money to attend the events that have the wow experiences. So what I think you're going to see is that this collective raising of the bar, the events industry, is going to make it so events, like, you got to be on your A game. Otherwise, people are going to say, I'm not going to attend, or you know what, I'll pay less money, or I just want to attend virtually, whatever it may be. So I think that's really what's going to happen over the short term of the events industry because of the pandemic, is this raising of the bar. And then if I had to pick another thing too, is that I think that we're also going to see this kind of collective misstep that has been felt because of the pandemic. We were making a lot of, I think, inroads in terms of things like sustainability, DEI, a bunch of these larger trends that were not related to technology and things like that. And I think that if we don't do it properly, we can almost like this last year have no further progress of what's been happening. However, I do think it's really exciting because digital events and virtual events has created new opportunities to help advance those agendas. So for example, let's talk about sustainability. If you're on less planes, if you're traveling less, right, you're printing out things less. Like how many people got rid of their printer in the last year, right? I hope everyone, because printers are bad. But I think that that's going to allow us to be more sustainable moving forward. But then let's talk about DEI, right? Like I was planning an event in, I think it was like October of last year. I only plan like one event for fun a year, just kind of keep my pulse on things. And an attendee came up, and you know, for years and years this event's been going on, and it's usually in like a remote location, like in the jungle or no electricity and things like that. And this attendee says, "Hey, I really want to say thank you for putting on this event." Which, if anyone's seen the movie Groove, this is like why I do events, is the nod. So this was very much a nod moment. It goes, you know, thank you so much for putting on this event. I literally would never been able to attend this event. I'm like, why? He's like, because I'm in a wheelchair. And we never thought about the fact that we have an attendee who's wanted to attend the event, that because we do it in a jungle or we do it in a remote island, they can't physically get there. But because of that, they were able to attend their first ever event. And I think that hybrid events create this opportunity where we can be truly inclusive no matter what. And I think that there's a huge ability for that to continue moving forward. We just have to be able to consciously keep doing it moving forward. I'm definitely no expert in DEI. I'm definitely no expert at 100% sustainability, but I know the writing on the walls that these things need to happen and we need to keep our focus on them. So I think that if we don't, though, it's going to be like, this was the year that never happened, or the 2 years that never happened, however long it ends up lasting. And I think we need to make sure that that progress continues to move forward because it's necessary for the events industry. And I mean, just I think humanity in general.
That's really interesting. So just to capture your first point, do you feel that events in a post-pandemic world, the physical events will either be really big, like a CES, and sort of everybody kind of wants to go there and will now maybe make an extra effort to be there because they want to feel that. And then the ones in between, or then you'll have the small ones, which are maybe more regional, where people will, you know, want to connect with their local community. But there's not a lot of space for things in between where, you know, if you're not quite a CES and you're in that same realm, it's like, nah, I'm going to go to the CES instead and go to my local kind of community hangout. Is that kind of where you're seeing things going?
That's a great question. I definitely think that there's a larger trend that, you know, the middle kind of always ends up going away no matter what, right? We see this across not just the events industry, but we see this across companies, right? Like bigger companies get bigger, smaller companies get started, and it's kind of this no man's land in between. You know, you talk about like economics, there's usually no middle when it comes to things. So I think it's important to think about it when it comes to this, is that I could see it being a trend that these larger events say, look, we need to create these more regional, tighter knit, brand aligned events. Let's acquire the smaller event, keep it small, but rebrand it, right? It's almost kind of like the concept of PAX. Yeah, PAX East, PAX West, and things like that. You know, they could easily do a PAX like global and have everybody go to it, but then you can kind of take these regional events for people that maybe don't want to go to the global one, that want maybe a more intimate experience. I think that could be really, really helpful for people. I also think that people really are craving that community element, right? That's a huge trend in the industry right now, is how do we create community, how to create year-long engagement. But I think the thing is that when it comes to it, is that you can't create it's really not that you can't. It's really hard to create community unless you have that smaller bits along the way to keep you engaged. So, you know, that's why you see so many of these associations, they have a big global conference or a national conference, and then they have their local chapters. But the problem is that you're not really giving the same brand alignment, the same technologies, things like that to those chapters. So they really feel like a second-hand experience. So you'll hear like so many people who are part of associations but never go to the local chapter stuff because it feels meh. Well, instead of maybe having a chapter in, every single state and doing meh events, instead maybe like, hey, let's do a Southwest conference and take the budgets of those 4 chapters put together and make it so they can, have a pretty decent conference with some pretty decent speakers, and allow them to get exposure to people beyond their normal circles too. Because as much as I love, the cool kids club where everybody and you're seeing the same people, it's also, I think, really important to be exposed to new people and new ideas, and rather than just be stuck in this only seeing the same people over and over again, right? You're the average of the 5 people closest to you. If you literally are only seeing the same 5 people over and over again, you're never going to grow and change.
So there is hope for small or regional events, but as long as they're smart about it is kind of what I'm hearing you saying.
For sure. Yeah. And I think that what's definitely changed over the last year is that like education, right? Like so many of these smaller events, they focus so much on education. It's really hard to get really good education on a lower budget, right? And also, let's pair that with the fact that now people know how to get education without going in person, right? They're craving more things like hands-on practicums, being able to experiment things, get their hands on. But if you're just literally having someone go up and talk, I'm going to go and say, cool, I'll look this person up on YouTube and watch it at 2 times speed later, or I'll watch it from my couch with my cats. People will decide that that's not the way they want to engage anymore. So you have to definitely be smart about it, like you were saying.
Good. So in this idea of future of the event industry, I think a big part of it is future of event tech, and since we're both so focused on event tech, tell me, do you have any sort of piece of event tech that got you excited in the last, I don't know, month or 2 months or last while? What's the last kind of new event tech that you saw that you were like, wow, this is cool. I can't wait to get my hands on this.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's hard to wow me anymore because like I focus so much on outside of the industry, and then like I'm excited when it eventually does come to the events industry. But so let me try to think of something that's like really, really incredible. I think a lot of times like in the events industry too, like it's always technology wise, it's second nature, right? Like we jokingly talk about how like we on the Event Tech podcast, Brent and I review like CES and all the tech coming out, and we're like, and that will come to the events industry in 10 years coming on in. But I definitely think everyone's gonna be kind of looking for that like immediate like event app or whatever it is. I don't usually have that because also that's not the area I completely focus in. That's why I have an implementation team. But for me, I'm really excited for some stuff that's kind of happening outside of it. So 2 things kind of pop into mind that made me go like, oh cool, this is really neat. So and I'll give a less recent example and then a more recent example. So less recent example that got me really excited is the area that everyone loves to talk about, but is hopefully eventually going to come to the industry is the VR stuff. I remember that I was I have like a full set VR set up in my house where I can like walk around and do what's called room scale VR. The Quest can do that now, which is really cool. But I played my first game where I played like a first person shooter where I had to like pick up the gun and like pull the actual stock to like do it. It felt like a realistic experience and felt like I was like on the battlefield, fighting. And I think that level of immersion is going to be really, really helpful for virtual events moving forward, that meta universe that's going to end up coming. So that was really exciting for me and got really, really stoked by. But let me give another example that I first noted was cool a while ago, but then I got to experience it firsthand, mainly because I recently got into this game, is at Fortnite and their concerts that they do. And it's something that like, at first I was like, oh yeah, cool. It's a concert inside of a video game. Who cares? And then I experienced it firsthand and saw like this world that they created. And so for those who have never played Fortnite before, like you buy all these skins, you like literally get to customize your character so much. It's like mind blowing. And this is coming from somebody who plays like Warzone and all these other games that are very similar. But this one's like to the nth degree. But what's also really cool is they emphasize on things that they know are going to help make those concert experiences better. So for example, you can buy these like dancing emotes with like glow sticks. And like it, like there's 3 different ones where he dances with glow sticks differently. There's ones where he, like, he's busting out a DJ setup and he's DJing. And I think it really adds that experience that they know that they not only are this like battle royale, kind of like who's the last man surviving, but also as well that they're a concert platform too. Most recently, Ariana Grande had a concert. And it's just really cool to be able to see. And you think to yourself, okay, cool. They're just going to like put her on a stage virtually and no, good to go. If you get a chance, watch the Travis Scott concert that recently happened. And the visuals that end up happening, like I was watching a recording of it and I went, oh my gosh, this is so incredible. They're transforming you into different worlds. They custom created all this content. They put a lot of effort into it. And it also put it that you were a part of it. So one of the coolest parts is that they made it where the characters are like floating up and floating down right to the beat of the music. So you really feel like you're part of there. I did a couple during the pandemic. We're looking for unique ways to watch musical artists. One of my favorite artists, Matt Zoe, did a Minecraft concert where he built out an entire world in Minecraft. I've never played Minecraft, which is, don't ever tell Minecraft, my client, that. But I decided to play it to do the concert. And it was so cool because you would think that a 2D blocky experience would not be a fun way to enjoy a concert. But the way they customized the world and they added lasers to come out of things and things like that was all using off-the-shelf stuff. They just kind of hacked it and did it in a weird way. And I think that that's a really, really good lesson for planners to be able to look at. Is A, the visual and the feel of the event is really important. But B, if you want to be able to do something unique and create a wow experience, it's not going to be an off-the-shelf thing. It's going to be that you trying to figure out how to hack something to do something weird. You might have to actually kind of break things. I know that obviously you guys started the event pros break stuff. And I think that that's a great example of trying to do something a little bit differently. And, you know, I think that's where I've always seen success is taking something that might not have been purposed for something and instead tweaking it just a little bit. And then people go, whoa, how'd you do that?
That's the definition of hacking, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, so what you're saying, you know, I've been thinking about this for a while, and I had some interviews with other people about similar topics, and I definitely see a future where, you know, we always talk about engaging online experiences, and when you talk about Fortnite and Minecraft, they're definitely engaging. People are playing these live, they're playing this with each other, they're spending hours at this. Do you see an opportunity for kind of video games that are actually business related? So if you kind of see a business video game, but if you do it well and if you do it in an immersive way, then that could be the conference. Like you talked about a practicum. Why not do a practicum through VR, right?
Yeah, totally. I think that's a great way of thinking. And I think that's why this larger platform, this metaverse that's eventually going to exist would be so smart, is that, you know, right now it's, yeah, you have to go from Minecraft. And even like in this case, Minecraft to Fortnite, they're on completely different platforms. One's on a computer, one's on the PlayStation 4 or PlayStation 5. And you literally have to move and disconnect and do these sort of things. But, you know, I'm imagining a world where, you know, I'm having a conversation with one of my employees about something. I need to go and speak at a conference. I then just literally, you know, transport, you know, /command, go to conference, and I go to it, and then, oh, hey, I'm going to go attend a conference, and I go to that, and it's all within one single platform. And I think that will help a lot in making it easier. But I'm also thinking, you know, when it comes to event professionals, some way that you can implement this is, like you said, like maybe instead of deciding to do the speaking, you know, through a live stream, what if you put everybody in a game of, you know, a Warzone or Fortnite, and then, but you still stream the audio, and then you make a stage in the platform, and then have everyone literally use their controllers to move around, and that's how you attend that talk. It breaks people, I think, out of their normal experience. The same reason why we go for walks, the same reason why conferences tend to happen in really lavish remote locations, is that when you change your environment, it also creates that creativity, it creates that mind-breaking moment that kind of comes in. And I think it's one reason why C2 was so successful, is that they did weird stuff like you sit on balls, or, you know, like, or the swings. They had the swings that you would do a meeting from. I think that sort of stuff really helps you break the way you're thinking, and I think that can be applied immediately. It's not going to be pretty, right? You can't like make a link where they click on it, they immediately get brought into Fortnite. You might have to say something like, okay, go here, add this person, they'll invite you, and like there might be a little bit of clunkiness to it, but that clunkiness will get better over time. But I think you'd be surprised how many people are willing to do clunky in order to get a different experience.
But if we're talking about something like a breakout where you're in that room to learn something, would you ever imagine that breakout then being a level of a game?
Yeah. I mean, maybe it's something like you tie it into the experience too. Like, let's say, for example, I'll try to choose like an easy analogy. It might be like something related to building, right? And building a culture of a company. Let's make that's the talk. We're all talking about building culture. How do we build culture within organizations? What if you literally put everybody in Minecraft and you gave them a certain blocks, and you helped, like you said something like, well, first start with a base layer of your house. That is this. Oh,
like
then you build
the Lego
doors.
Serious Play kind of thing, but like a
Yeah,
virtual
yeah.
version, right? You kind of
Exactly. And same kind of concept. And I think that the best talks that we remember are the ones that do that sort of stuff. You know, I don't remember many talks where I sat in a chair, listened to someone on a screen or even on a stage, and was like, oh my gosh, this changes completely how I'm going to do business or how I'm going to be as a person or whatever it may be. But the ones that make those subtle little things are really, really, I think, where the difference gets made.
That's really interesting. Yeah, thanks for going on this little journey with me. I think it's always interesting to kind of extrapolate and figure out where we think the future might go.
Absolutely.
Well, it's been a pleasure. We're almost wrapping up. I just wanted to ask you for a recommendation for someone who you think we should invite to also be a guest on the podcast, because we'd like to kind of continue this chain of goodwill and smart people to have interesting chats with.
Yeah, absolutely. This is the hard question. I was like, I knew this question was coming and I had to like have an answer ready to go, and I still don't have one 100%, but you know, and it's also tough because I'm like trying to remember who you've had on the show already. But
Don't worry. If it's someone we've had on the show, I'll tell you, and you can think of someone else.
Yeah. You know, it's an easy answer for me. I'll choose an easy answer and then maybe I can come up with a better one. But the first one, have you guys had Brand on yet?
Not yet. He's been at quite a few of our events, but he's not been a guest on the podcast.
All right. Brand's a good one. Obviously, him and I are really easy. We're very similar too. So, like anyone who's listening to this, if you like me, check out Brand as well. But if I had to pick someone else who would, kind of break things and do things a little bit differently, I would say find one of those artists, a DJ, maybe like Matt Zoe, for example, who did that Minecraft series. Find someone who did a really cool concert experience, something that people thought could not be replicated online. Is the idea of being at a concert, being around all the people, but create this experience that people walked away and wanted to talk about. So like Matt Zoe, I would recommend, for example, a lot of these EDM, Insomniac has been doing a really, really great job with it. I think those kind of people are where we need to think about when it comes to the events industry and where we have the potential to use virtual to create these memorable experiences that we thought couldn't be replicated online.
That sounds really good. I think it makes sense to get people who are essentially creating events, but don't necessarily think about it as in the same way as the event industry people might, and then kind of picking their brains and figuring out what's interesting and how they see things differently. I think that's excellent advice.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Will, for your generosity, for your time, for being with us. I hope you enjoyed being on the Event Manager podcast. And where can people find you if they don't know where to find you already?
It's been such a pleasure, Miguel. Always fun getting to talk to you. If anyone wants to find me, helloendless.com is our site. That's where the blog post is. Got tons of resources and awesome that stuff. Like all the podcasts are over there if you want to check them out. If this piqued your interest in any sort of way, or you want to check out one of our shows. And then if you ever want to find more information about me, willcurran.com has links to all my social media and everything like that. But usually if you find Endless, you can find me pretty quick. I'm usually pretty attached to the brand, so you can find me pretty quick. But yeah, check out helloendless.com and reach out if you ever need anything. I'm also on LinkedIn. It's probably where I'm most common, and I try to answer every single LinkedIn message. I'm still getting backlogged of messages through, so don't hesitate to reach out. But I'm also on Twitter, Instagram, all those fun stuff.
Excellent. Thank you, Will. The chief Einstein of Endless Events.
Woo!
Oh, yeah.
Thank you for listening to this edition of the Event Manager podcast. Please subscribe and rate the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. For the latest news and the best articles on technology and innovation in the event industry, head over to eventmb.com.